First and foremost, I want to thank you for coming on the platform. It's definitely an honor. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Pleased to meet you.
Likewise, likewise. I gotta let you know I'm in Ghana right now. I'm in Africa, so sometimes we're not as technologically advanced. So if we get disconnected, it'll continue to record, and then I'll edit it
Okay.
afterwards.
All right. So if we get disconnected, then I'll just wait for you to get back on. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, yeah, it's live recording. So it's not live recording, but it'll record
Yeah.
your end, so everything will be good on your side. So you could keep talking, but we should be good. But just so you know.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
Sounds good.
Now, right, right. Now, for the viewers who may not recognize you, let them know who you are and definitely where you're from.
My name is Ron Wasserman. I'm a composer for television and probably best known for X-Men and Power Rangers and the score on Dragon Ball Z and about 100,000 other things. And I'm speaking to you from beautiful Los Angeles, California. Well, just a little bit north of there, where I was born and raised.
Wow,
Now you know
wow,
who I
that's
am.
amazing. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I was checking out the IMDb, the Wikipedia. I mean, your resume is outstanding. I got to thank you because you contributed to so many TV shows that a lot of us grew up on. You know, some of our favorite memories of those TV shows was obviously the theme songs and the background music. So I want to thank you for that for sure.
You're very welcome. Thank you for mentioning it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Now I want to ask you this. Now, how did you first get exposed to music? What was your experience like? When did you connect with music?
Uh, I think I started connecting with music before I could even. I recently found a picture of me at 2 years old standing by the record player, kind of by a few records. And I started playing piano when I was 3, started writing when I was 5, had my first little published song for finger exercise books when I was 5.5. And then I was just always in bands, always failed music classes because I kind of had my own way of doing things. Um, but stayed with music the whole time, got out of high school, sort of kind of went to college, but not really. And then decided to start joining bands and figuring out what to do because I knew absolutely nobody in the business. All my closest friends were in different professions. And then I was in a lot of 80s bands, almost got signed a few times, got really close, was pretty big in LA. And then one day I got called in by a friend of mine to engineer mixed music for a composer at a company called Saban Entertainment. And I just kind of was hooked right from the beginning. It was fun watching him work. And so I kind of parked my ass there. I didn't leave ever. And then whenever there was downtime, they let me use the studio and I would send compositions to the producers who were very instrumental in my career at breaking me of the format of songwriting and learning how to score. And I was still mixing for everybody else. And then in 92, I think it was 92, then X-Men came in and did the theme for that. And then the career lit up. And from that point up forward, it's just been great and very busy all the time.
Wow, that's very, very interesting and it's inspiring and motivating. So I gotta ask you, did you have any musicians in the family? Because you said you was, and I even seen it online. So you was playing the piano at 3. You know, people still learning how to talk, learning how to walk, but you was able to, do that.
I think I was probably still in a diaper. Anyways, no, I had a cousin that played clarinet and he went on to get in symphonies, but it's a completely different world. Other than that, no, I did not know a soul. Nobody in the neighborhood. I mean, we're all playing baseball and riding skateboards and stuff like that. Well, I wasn't so good on a skateboard, but no, I was the musician, and that was it. Of course, later on, I met plenty of people, and I think one of the reasons I started to learn to emulate and play every instrument is because dealing with other musicians at times can be rather frustrating, to say the least. There's a lot of egos there and a lot of people who aren't prepared and whatnot. So I just figured I'll start learning how to play it all myself. And I can't play a lick of guitar, but I always absolutely loved guitar. So I had to find a way to fake it and make it sound as real as possible.
Wow, wow, that's phenomenal. Let me see. Okay, so now I want to ask you: is there a difference between, say, like you making music for your band or for listeners, in comparison to doing like a TV show or a theme song? Is it a different process, or is it just like all the same?
It's different because when you're songwriting, which I'm doing for a friend's band, I'm writing something for them. It's you go from a emotional level, and although you're always creating out of thin air, it's you start with a feel with what you're doing with the music, and then try and get that melody to have the correct emotion, then do lyrics. Lyrics for me are always kind of last. And as opposed to being sent a show, when I was doing like the Thundermans or stuff for SpongeBob, you have the picture in front of you, you know the sound they want, you're scoring new pictures. So it's more initially figuring out what will work, how to work around all the dialogue. It's kind of a completely different thing, but both are songwriting's more fun, but television is, really my thing also. I love them both. So one's
Okay, okay.
emotional and one's more logical and pragmatic, I guess. That's a way to put it.
Okay, okay. Because a lot of times, I guess as fans or viewers, we take it for granted. The musicians don't get as much credit. Like you said, for the fighting scenes or the opening theme or when the movie
Yeah.
ends, because that's very very important. Some of our favorite films, we love the music as well. So I could just imagine if it wasn't any music at all, or if the music didn't match what was going on and what we were watching. So, you know.
Yeah. And there's, I'm not critical of other composers at all, but there are several times where I'm watching something on Netflix or whatnot, and it's it's either telegraphing, meaning it's letting you know what's coming. So you'll kind of wonder, the scene's a little bit ambiguous. You don't really know what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden in comes the dark music. You're like, well, something bad's about to happen. You just gave it away. So I try to avoid that at all costs unless the director absolutely wants it. But it's pretty interesting scores these days. They're getting a lot cooler, more synth based, keyboard based, and I'm loving it. But yeah, the music guys, it's best other than the theme song. You're supposed to feel it, or if there's a song in the background. But other than that, you're supposed to just support. That's why they call it underscore. You're supposed to be way back there and not notice it. That's when it's really working. If you take the
Okay.
music out, the scene doesn't seem as emotional, or the fight scene or whatever. But with it, it shouldn't get in the way of everything that's happening.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I can ask you if you could talk about that process a little bit because things have changed technologically. I guess back in the days, maybe the 90s or 80s or however far back, I know people was recording on the tapes and the reels and in the studio,
Oh
but it's like
yeah,
now people recording on their cell phones or they're recording in their house. They could make a home studio. They got a laptop. Even with the DJs, they used to have to carry the records and the instruments.
yeah.
Now they just got an iPad or something.
Yeah, and and most of those guys, they've already written the stuff ahead of time because I'll get behind them and watch what they're doing. They're not really doing anything, but they're looking like they're doing stuff. At times they're doing things, but that's all fine. You want to have it programmed ahead of time. But yeah, all that original, especially the '80s stuff. But X-Men and Power Rangers, that was all to big old 2-inch tape machines, all locked up, meaning they were synced together to picture, and it was a freaking nightmare. It took forever. Can work 10 times as fast now. And your sound palette was kind of limited because everything sort of sounded the same unless you customized it. I did what I could, but it was just the beginning of sampling things and whatnot. So it was a challenge back then. But I've always been kind of on the cutting edge. And then then, I had a big studio with tons of gear to do everything, and then just downsized and downsized. And now I'm down to a Mac studio and a monitor, and I've scored films and television and can make it sound like anything in the world. It doesn't look impressive, and it's so fast. So I love today's technology. Plus, there's no waiting. If you have the idea, you can get right to it. It's not like you have to throw on a roll of tape, get everything wired in, it's much better. And that's why I think scores have evolved in a really great way now. And songwriting, even though it's kind of the same, the pop charts and whatnot, but the sound of everything is remarkable. It's so fat and punchy. So that's where digital really works well.
Wow, wow. Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about the X-Men cartoon thing because that was probably my first introduction to you. It's arguably a lot of people's favorite cartoon. You know, people that were children at that time. Um,
Yeah, it's
what was
great.
your experience and your knowledge of Marvel comics? Were you a Marvel comic fan, or was it just like another job at that time, or what?
Man, when they came in with it, my one of my closest friends, he did all the sound effects on that show, and he's a huge comic book guy. And I remember walking in and just saying, "Give me a 5-minute description of what X-Men is." I mean, I knew nothing. I didn't follow any comics at all, which really was not any kind of issue for scoring the stuff because I got it right away. But I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any backstory that I needed to know before even attempting a theme because I wasn't really sure what the theme would be at first. Because it was all the music was written first and then they cut the opening to the music. And that was a tough theme because kept getting notes back. They would want to hear the digga 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 a little louder. So turn that up, and they said, "Well, now we can't hear this sound." So you push that up, and like now we can't hear the other sound. And it went on for about 2 weeks, and it was had a lot of tracks on that thing. I was very happy when they said it's done. It's done.
But it was definitely worth it, most definitely. Like I said, that's definitely one of my favorite cartoons. And you
Yeah.
just see how Marvel turned into this machine with all of the movies and stuff they're cranking out. And they just redid, I think, the X-Men cartoon or something
Yeah.
like that. And I was
Yeah.
gonna
I
ask
heard
you,
the.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
well, I was
Sorry.
going to ask you if you had a chance to check any of those projects out, and were you a part of those as well, or just the cartoon?
No, I actually tried to contact a few people, but Marvel is its own universe. So my friends at Disney, I asked them about it, and they said we're not really in charge of that. Try to get somebody at Marvel, and I pulled every connection I could, but they never got back to me, which is fine. I don't know if they even ever saw any of the emails. And I was only going to try so hard. If they wanted me, that would be fine. But the guys who ended up recutting the theme, I think they did a pretty great job at it. I love it. It's not an easy thing to do to modify anything that it's like your favorite songs from the past. You know every note, you know exactly how everything sounds, and to change any of it can really kind of screw with your head. But they did a great job.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because it has to have a certain level of consistency. Like you go from the comic books and you go to the cartoon and you go to the movie, and, and you got the music, of course. So that's
Yeah,
that's real cool. Now I got to ask you about another major hit, the Power Rangers. This was like
yeah,
incredible when I was a child. If I could just ask you about that, were you already familiar with the show and how involved were you? Because you did the fight scenes and the theme song as
yeah.
well.
Every bit of music on that thing for the first 3 years, and they kept using the stuff that I had done. So that show was 100% mine. On X-Men, I did a chunk of the score, but I think there was another guy, I don't know who it was, that did some of that music as well. But Power Rangers was all mine. And that theme, there had been kind of another type of show that they were going to call Metal Man. I don't remember if it was the same footage, but they revamped the show and bought all that footage from Japan, and they were going to call it Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And it took about 2.5 hours to bang that thing out. I mean, it was a very lucky thing when that happens. It happens now and then. Sometimes I just hear most of it in my head, and I'm able to then go through the labor of getting it out of my head on the tape. But yeah, that was a pretty good one. I was pretty happy with that. And then the next day they called and they said it's Fox Loves It. And I said, who are we going to get to sing it? Because that was just my guide vocal. I'd never even really sung on anything. It was just to show them what I was thinking. And that turned into doing the score, of course, and all those songs for it, which was really fun.
Right now, that seems like a lot of fun. One of my childhood friends, Brandon, he was a Power Ranger fanatic. He used to sing that song all the time. Now, I want to ask you, now what was the difference between doing the fight scenes? Is it like you got to keep coming back for different episodes, or do you have to keep up with what's going on, or they just send you a clip and they say, well, add something to this fight scene? Because it's several seasons, like you say, for the X-Men, you do the theme and they can kind of bring it back and bring it back. Were they doing that with the
Yeah.
fight scenes as well?
Well, for the beginning of the big fight scenes, there was this long theme, and we just called it the kitchen sink. So you could just pop it in. So they ended up using that kind of stuff. But initially, they wanted songs during the fight scenes. So the very first one was called Fight, and then Combat, and then later on down the road, it ended up being a little bit of a issue because the songs were, they're not really heavy metal, but for that at that time they're pretty hardcore for a kids show. So um kids started fighting while listening to it. So of course they blame the music, not the kids or how they're raised or anything. So then I had to tone it down, and they said just use major chords, happy chords, and no more words like fight or combat or anything that will incite any kind of violence in children. So it was actually very simple to do. But it was that edict came from the White House, because Haim Saban was friends with the Clintons. I mean, the Clintons were always at his house when they were in Los Angeles. And so, it was making the news. And apparently Al Gore, VP, and his wife was always after rap stuff for whatever reason she had. And so that was where the order kind of came from, I was very flattered.
Wow, wow. Thank you for sharing that, because that's a lot of information that people don't know. They don't realize, they just tuning in once a week. Now I can ask you, now they had different, I guess, movies and series of Power Rangers. Now were you involved with those? Power Rangers in Space, Power Rangers Turbo, Power Rangers, the movie?
Yeah, well, the first movie, I was going to score it. And I remember having meetings with 20th Century Fox, and they sent me what's called the dailies, which are just maybe 2 or 3 minute rough cuts of what they've shot. And I would score to that. And they loved it. But then Saban didn't want my name on the film. And 20th Century Fox said, we don't play that way. We're going to put his name on. He's going to get proper credit. So I got yanked off that project, which was near the end of, I was still doing stuff for him at home after I left, but that was kind of a real kick in the head for me. They should have let me have that film, because the film I would have done the big rock stuff. And unfortunately they went with a whole different kind of score. But I was still helping write themes afterwards for Space, Turbo, maybe one other. And then Disney brought me back in 2005, I think, for SPD, which was great. They said, just do what you do. And yeah, that one I banged out in an afternoon, sent it to him. Next day said, put some sirens on it. It's great. We'll use that, which I was thrilled about.
Okay, okay. Let me see now.
But if you write the,
okay, I wanted to
if you
ask you.
write the,
Okay.
oh, sorry. Oh, one more point about that.
No, no.
At Disney and Nickelodeon, if you write the theme, you're not allowed to score the show. And if you do the score, you're not allowed to write the theme. So I figured when I had the theme for SPD, they were going to let me score the show, but they said no, we don't do it that way, which is defies logic. But I had the theme, so I was fine with it.
Okay, okay. Now let me see. I wanted to ask you about another show. You was involved in the Dragon Ball Z theme and fight scenes. If you could talk about that a
Yeah,
little
they
bit, how did you connect with that?
well, I loved it. That was after I left Saban, and they called and they said, "Hey, we have this show that just if you're interested in doing it, just do it." And nobody is interested in it at all. So I never even saw the main title opening with the song. I didn't write the Rock the Dragon thing. I just was set the show, and then when the theme would come up, there'd be maybe I think 60 seconds of a blank screen just saying theme. I didn't even know what key it was in, but they handed me the show, and I fell in love with it with the first episode. And I just scored it at home and would send them a digital audio tape of the score for their mix. And nobody ever said great, bad, fix. There was never a note on it. So I had free range to do what I wanted for 3 years on that thing. And I loved it. I fell in love with the show. I mean, how can you not love Goku?
Right, right. That's amazing. People, just dream of being able to accomplish something like that, and you like I say, you got such a large resume, so that lets you know how powerful your work is because you connecting and reconnecting with these major projects that have influenced people all around the world. That's global.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot of luck and you have to have a lot of tenacity. And you always have to remember nothing you do is precious. You're not changing the world. I mean, people are happy to hear stuff if you're lucky, but other than that, there's no ego involved. And I think that's worked out really well for me because people in the industry, even that I meet or talk to, they're like, you just basically you're not mean and you have no ego about it. You're like, hey, you want to do something? Let's do it. That's just how I've always approached it my whole life.
man, that's priceless, and that's something you picked up. Like you say, when you say your whole life, literally, you've been playing music your whole life. So I want to ask you, like, what are you working on now? Are you still doing scores? Are you doing some independent projects? Are you, on stage performing or in the studio?
Yeah, well, I've been we're playing on tracks for this friend of mine that was in an 80s band called Reflex. He's in the UK. So he'll send me the splits and then I'm doing keyboard stuff for them. That's just for fun. Then I'm writing for him, which he doesn't know yet, but I'm going to write him, see if I can write him a hit. And, uh, and then we had a big writer's strike here that shut down the business. It's kind of, it was kind of an odd thing, things were just ramping up and then COVID hit and that killed it. And then things were just ramping up and then the strike came and now things are still a bit slow. But I mean, I always have work to do. I wrote stuff earlier this week that goes in the music libraries. They're always very happy to get it and they license that stuff for all sorts of projects. So there's never a shortage of work. And I'm hoping maybe by the end of the year I'll find another series to do. But the industry changed a lot with this strike. And now there's another strike possibly coming, so they're kind of waiting till June, July to see if that one gets resolved. So a lot of stuff is still on hold. That's the business.
Wow, wow. I definitely hope, everything works out with the strike and everybody can kind of, get back to work and, keep making
Yeah.
them classics and, doing what they love to do. Now, I wanted to ask you, for the viewers, if they want to keep up with what you're doing, future projects and things you might be working on? Do you have like a website or, social media or anything like that? Or are you more behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's fine. People always find me on Facebook. You just Google my name, I'm there. And then there's my website that has those links is ronw.com. And that will, I don't really, there's the link so you can go to IMDb like you did and whatnot, because to keep up with that is just not my thing. It's a general site, but it's a good launch pad, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, yeah. Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. So yeah, we
Oh,
roughly
look at
about
that. A
30
little
minutes
thumb
in.
showed
So I
up.
just wanted to I want to thank you again. Thank you so much for just sharing your story with us because it's very inspiring and giving us the background of how you got started. So for the viewers, it takes time for some people. It takes a long time, but it's ultimately worth it. You know what I'm saying? It makes something a
Yeah.
huge of an impact have you have done. So that's truly phenomenal. And I want to thank the viewers for tuning in. It's been another great episode of Taye Speaks. So until next time, peace.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone.
Um,